Hello, everyone, and welcome to another podcast episode of PsyMood Podcast Series. My name is Ross, your host as always. Today, I'm extremely honored to have an amazing human being on a personal level, but also on a business level too, that's very inspiring. Today, we have Kevin Brady, who is the founder and director of Advica Health. But along with that, he is an entrepreneur, mental health advocate, author, keynote speaker, volunteer, and on a personal level, a five-time Team Canada triathlete. As someone, as you know, training for my first Ironman, this is a real honor for me to be here. So Kevin, thank you so much, sir, for giving us your time today.
Yeah, so pleased to be here, Ross. Awesome.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I know you're super busy, and it's just before we press recorded, we were speaking about the wonderful things that we can discuss today. And, you know, the biggest thing is, you know, what drew you to founding, directing, building Advica Health?
Yeah, so when I look back, there's probably a few things, and I'll speak to the personal side of things first, because I believe that there were some personal things that happened in my life that gave me the impetus to start Advica, but also in my previous business as well to start Advica. But personally, I mean, I've always been, I'll say, fairly active. Over the years, you know, grew up playing like high school sports and playing hockey and skiing and doing a bunch of other things. Then went to university, swam at university. And then once I started working, I'll say I started living the life of a normal Canadian, right? And eating probably foods that I shouldn't eat, but I was still working out and that type of thing. And I had, I'll say, a wake-up call, a very, could have been tragic wake-up call in 1999. And for your listeners, I'd like to, if they can go back and think of what they were doing, some of them likely weren't even born, but May 1999, I was running my 5th marathon. And during that marathon, I felt okay, but after the race, I wasn't feeling well. And I actually went to the medical tent and went to the medical director, and I said, I'm not feeling well. And he checked my heart rate and took my blood pressure and said, Kev, you're fine, go home. Well, fortunately, because I had run 4 other marathons, I didn't go home. I hung around. My wife kind of went off with their other 2 kids and left me with our 8-year-old. And she said, I'll pick you up later. Well, I still wasn't feeling well. And when people say, how did you feel? I actually felt like death. Like, you know, I don't know if you've ever, Ross, if you've ever had a near-death experience, but I was just going south. I was drinking Gatorades and finally went back to the medical tent and demanded an ambulance. And the last thing I actually remember is climbing in that ambulance, up the steps of the ambulance with help with my 8-year-old son. And then I obviously just passed out or whatever. They rushed me to a local hospital. My wife was actually on her way back to pick me up. So she passed the ambulance, not knowing I was in it, with the, you know, with the lights flashing and the sirens going. And so got to the hospital. In reading the medical reports, it took 11 doctors and nurses to tie me down until they could sedate me and figure out what was the matter. Yeah, and then they did CT scans and MRIs and a bunch of tests, and they knew it was very serious. So they actually shipped me off to a specialty hospital where I ended up in a coma for a week. I was on full life support, so I had machines keeping me alive. I basically had a ventilator and a respirator, and they actually gave, again, reading the medical reports, they gave me a less than 10% chance of surviving. Fortunately, I did survive. I came out of it a week later. The medical condition I had was called hyponatremia. And I know you're training for an Ironman right now, so you got to be careful of this. And that's basically low sodium, low magnesium, low minerals in your body that your body starts shutting down. And the difference that day, it was very, very warm. So I was probably over consuming liquids, and then they get diluted and everything else. So, but you know what, when I look back on that, for years I blamed the heat and I just blamed other conditions. But when I look back on it, and one of the reasons I wrote my book is I was fit, but I wasn't healthy, right? So I was on a scale of 1 to 5. I would have been a 5 fitness wise, but on a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of food, I'd say I lived on the standard North American diet, ate a lot of junk food. I wasn't sleeping great. I just started a new business in the employee benefits field. My mindfulness and stress levels were quite high. So I was very fit, but I wasn't healthy. right? So that was a real wake up call for me, from a health standpoint, for sure.
Yeah, I bet. And it's funny, a lot of people, come to the realization, like the conceptual understanding of why people create something is usually from experiences, or they've had an incident in their family. Me personally, I was not as similar as yours, because amazing that you're still here, because you hear about people pushing themselves to the limit and never coming back from that limit. And for me, I was the same. I was pushing myself to the point of exhaustion, but never really felt that I was doing anything harmful. And one day after training, I realized that I was getting a shortness of breath. And I put that off as I just worked out really, really hard. So that's something that understood. And then through that process, I started to get slower and slower breath. And I said, you know what, maybe I should do something about this. And within minutes, I don't remember what happened. And I remember waking up in an intensive care unit in Vancouver General Hospital.
Wow.
In the contagion. This was before COVID. This was the contagion unit, because at the doctors, you could hear them talking. I'm sure you could as well. They're prodding you and poking you and all these things like that. And they were saying, we don't really know what this is. So I was like, oh, geez. Like, my first thought is I got training tomorrow. Do you think I could make this?
Yeah, of course.
Because you think to yourself as an athlete, it's like, okay, I could take an hour off, but like a full day, that's a bit intense.
That's a big commitment.
That's a big ask for me, doctor. I don't know if I could do that. And they did all the blood tests and everything was fine. And they were saying, we don't really know what this was. And they found out that after more research that I had epiglottitis, which was a condition that kids get. Something that kids get, and when your epiglottis shuts down and doesn't open up, so air can't get in and out. But they say what happens is, in a rare case an adult gets it, it usually is a life ender, because it's in that point of, once it's closed, it's very rarely that it will open back up. And in that moment, I thought to myself, do I continue to push? Or do I take a break? And mentally, and one thing that I would love to know on your side is mentally, I didn't want to. I wanted to continue because I worked so hard to get to where I was, that having that moment of I might have to take months off really concerned me. So I did take the time off because my mom made me, and you have to listen to your mom, of course. But in that process, I felt so deflated that I was wasting this time not being active and fulfilling my egotistical goal of wanting to be the best. Did you find that too as well after that situation?
Actually, I didn't. Health? Yeah, I didn't, because my issue was, I was in a coma, and it probably took me 3 months to recover from that coma.
Wow,
and
okay.
I just started a business, so
Right.
meanwhile I'm worried about the business. But I literally took the summer off. My wife basically drove me up to our cottage up in Muskoka. And I basically took 3 months of rehab with zero, when you say take a day off, I could not even walk 5 steps when I came home from the hospital.
Jeez.
And then I remember it was a big ordeal for me to walk our kids to the bus stop, which is only probably 100 yards down the road.
Right.
And that was like an accomplishment, right? So it took me, because of my condition and my atrophy and everything else, it took me, I remember I went for a run Labor Day weekend, and that was literally, and my marathon experience was May 31st of 1999. So, so it was literally 4 months later that I actually thought of fitness again. Right?
Wow.
Yeah.
So I guess in a way, you kind of took a break without taking a break on purpose, because you had that situation where it's just like, well, you have to take a break.
Well, you're forced to.
You're forced to, right? And then, so individuals that go through that process, like myself, I wasn't forced to take a break. I was recommended. And that's the kind of the quandrum that you had is, it's like, I know my family has heart conditions, but I know I'm really strong and I can get through this. But then also being realistic and understanding that I can only push so far. And you being the athlete that you are, even now, has that changed your training mentality? And because obviously you went through something so traumatic. Did that kind of change how you exercised and also mentally exercised too?
Yeah, you know what? So I'll go one step further, because I had another wake up call after that one.
Oh,
so
dear.
I needed a couple bumps over the head. So So after that marathon, I basically went back. Once I recovered, I went back to, training, and I'll say what I thought was a pretty healthy lifestyle.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until, and I would go for an executive medical. I don't know if you've gone for like a comprehensive medical
Yes.
at any executive health clinics, but I would go every year, and every year it would be pretty much the same. Well, 10 years after my marathon in 2009, I went and I thought everything would be normal. And the doc came in and he said, Kev, I want to put you on meds. And I said, meds for what? He said, you've got high cholesterol, you're diabetic. He says, you're about 45 pounds overweight and you have high blood pressure.
Wow, really?
Yeah. And he could tell by the look on my face that I was like totally against that and shocked, I'll say. So I basically begged him for 3 months. I said, give me 3 months, like to turn things around. And he said, Kev, I hate to say this, but you've been abusing your body for years. He said, you're not going to change things around in 3 months. So I bargained with him. I said, please give me 3 months. I'm going to change things. And of course, he's probably heard this story 100 times before, right? So, and the other thing I'll say that still sticks in my mind is he said, Kev, you're middle-aged. He says, it's normal to go on these meds. And for me, that wasn't normal, right? Like I thought there's got to be another way here. And he just made it sound like, why wouldn't you take them? Like, it's just normal, right? So so again, bargained with him for 3 months, went home that night, talked to my wife, and we really dialed in, and I dialed in. She was going on a nutrition plan through a nutritionist she had met with that's part of actually our Advica network today. And so I just said, I'm just going to follow what Barb's doing. And literally within a few weeks, I'm like feeling better. I'm losing weight. I'm sleeping better. I have more energy. Like even to the point, I remember going into one of our associate offices, and when I walked in, the receptionist said, "What are you doing?" And I thought, "What do you mean? What am I doing? Like, this is my office. I'm okay here." And she said, "You look great. Like, what are you doing?" And I go, "Oh, thanks." And I kind of just shared that I'm doing a few key things. But so after a month, I called the doc and I said, I'd like to have my blood tests. And again, he said, Kev, they aren't going to change in 1 month. Like you've been abusing your body for years, right? So he said, reluctantly, I'll order the blood rec for you, which I got. Went and had my blood taken. The next week, I get this call, and the call was, he didn't even introduce himself. He said, "You're my star patient."
Oh, wow.
Said, "Who is this?" And he says, "It's Dr. Randy." He said, "I don't know what you've been doing. Keep doing it." He says, "You're not only in the range, you're at the low level in cholesterol, in sugar levels, your diabetes, like everything's come down significantly." And again, he said, "I don't know what you're doing, but let's meet again in 6 months." And literally from that date, I've just continually tried to dial up my health, which is, what we try to do with all of our members as well at Advica, right? Is to help people be healthier versions of themselves. And I'll say again, I was always of the feeling, as long as I worked out every day, I was good. I was good mentally. I was good physically. I could eat whatever I wanted. My sleep didn't matter. My stress levels didn't matter. Because I thought as long as I worked out every day, I'd be fine. And now I know that's not true. We all need to pay attention to all those 4 areas of our health.
Agreed. And I think, having another incident like that kind of enlightens you to the reality of fragility, I guess, mentally and physically. We are all in a position where we can push, but sometimes our body's going to push back and say, hey, that's enough. And we have to listen to it. But it's also very inspiring, your story on your second event is because you wanted to prove to your doctor, like Dr. Randy saying, hey, listen, I'm going to prove to you that I'm going to do this. And I think sheer willpower is something that we not necessarily take for granted, but don't realize the importance of willpower. The one thing that with my coach is telling me through the hard times of doing, an Ironman is your willpower is going to get you across that finish line. You may not be first, but you're going to finish, and your willpower will make you do that. And I think during this time of the pandemic is people are starting to find that they're finding it hard to get that willpower back and to really say, but what am I going to do? I'm confused. There's so much uncertainty. Will I go back to work? Will I not go back to work? Is my job still there? I think our willpower of trying to tell ourselves, whatever happens, we will do it. We will survive. And your story of that one is again, and all your stories is quite powerful to show that no matter what age or, fitness level you are, willpower will always triumphant, which is amazing.
Yeah. And you know what, like I look back and I mean, I'm having my 60th birthday this year.
Wow,
And,
congratulations.
yeah. And my, even like not, but my times for triathlon, again, because I measure them each year, I'm actually faster and quicker today than I was 10 years ago. And am I necessarily stronger or faster? No, but I think it's a lot of what you're saying. It's the willpower, it's eating healthy, it's my paying attention to my sleep and my mindfulness, right? And looking at all those different areas of our life versus what I used to do, which was just paid attention to one area of my life, which was fitness, and felt everything else would be fine.
Right, exactly. And I think, especially like Advica's mission is to be able to provide, care, putting care back into healthcare. And I love that line so much because we look at healthcare sometimes, and even in the line of work that I'm in, we are so kind of wary of healthcare and that support. And using that line of putting care back into healthcare is so important. So what really took you to this position where you're like, I want to find a solution. I want to create a solution for workplaces, individuals, corporations, team members. What was it? Your events that you had in your personal life that drew it, or did you have also things in your corporate life that drew you to this path?
Yeah, great question, Ross. So I would say it's both, right? So, while those things were happening personally and health changes and for the better, I've grown up in the employee benefits business, right? So we would, and started off my career with one of the largest insurance companies in Canada, kind of grew through their corporate structure, and then decided in '98 to go and start my own employee benefits consulting firm, which I grew again to one of the largest in Canada. But through that work, because business owners and executives, when they had health issues and they knew my focus on health, they would call me to figure it out. Right. So they would call me and say, Kev, I've got this health issue, or I've got a heart issue, or I've got, potential cancer, or whatever it is. And I would figure it out. And I'd use my connections in Canada. I'd use my connections down in the US at Cleveland Clinic or Duke or wherever it was to just help people figure it out. And after a while, I thought there's got to be, I want to provide this service to our clients. There's got to be a service in Canada that is providing health navigation. So I did an RFP myself, and pulled a small team together. We did an RFP out to the Canadian marketplace, and we had mental health, we had EAP programs, we had executive medicals, we had health navigation, we had second opinions. So all components of what I consider a great health portfolio. And no one could do it. Everybody came back. All the providers said, the executive medical clinic said, we can handle the executive medicals. And certain firms would say, oh, we can handle the mental health. And others would say, we can handle the second opinion. But nobody was doing this all under one umbrella. So I would say it was more a need. I just thought, I think there's a real need for this. And that to put all this under one roof so that people, no matter what health issue they have, anything from I just have a headache to I need a prescription to I've just been diagnosed with cancer, that we're able to help them out. And that's really, since day one, what I always say, what we're about is putting our arm around people and helping them and guiding them to the very best health solutions locally and in the world, which brought us together, right?
That's amazing. Yeah, and that's the wonderful partnership with PsyMood is, working with partners and being involved in that kind of organization of, there's so many different little tiers that you can choose. Why not just put them all together in one bundle? And that's one thing that you were saying is there's a lot of apples, but they're all kind of spread out. Why can't we just put them in one basket?
Well, yeah, and if I put my benefits hat back on, and actually I'm still involved with NFP, which is who I sold my company to, and I'm a director at NFP, and so I still am heavily involved in the benefits field. But when I look at usage on corporate plans of benefits, and I'll use EAP as an example, EAP programs are terribly underutilized. Often it's like 3 or 5% of an employee population that's even engaging in an EAP program. And whereas our usage on our mental health through a partner like yourself is 24%, right? Like so 24% of our members or their families have used mental health over the last year, our mental health services. And the reason I believe it's so high is individuals, I'll say employees, they don't know who to call. They don't know how to access the number. They aren't sure of confidentiality. So they just don't do it. Whereas, I'll use an example of, let's say an individual or an employee phones into our nurse navigation team. They may not even know they need mental health support. They just, but through very skillful questioning, our nursing team is able to determine that, that maybe that's the right path for them, right? So we guide them, as I say, put our arms around that individual and guide them to the right solution. And I believe that's why we see such high usage with our program.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt it. And, the one thing that, working in that corporate world myself and through PsyMood and also other, mental health solutions, you always find that they're so preoccupied, companies, on the physical safety, don't slip, physical health, things like that. But I find that mental health is still not at the level it should be when it comes to awareness in the departments. And I think having an organization like yours, a company like yours, putting everything and realizing the importance of having that mental health support is key, because let's be honest, we are now kind of technically going back to work as individuals, re-entering the workplace, whether it's at home or physically in the office. And the one thing that we always talk about is, are people ready to go back into the workplace? Are we solid? Like, are we ready to go? And knowing that there's Advica out there, and hopefully the company that they're going back to is a partner with you, it would be nice to know that I have that support. I have that, comforting hug, like everything's going to be great. We have the answers. And that's why it's such an amazing experience to speak to you, because we are entering into a new phase of work life that we've probably never experienced before.
Yeah, you're dead on. I mean, during COVID, the numbers. I mean, stress levels were at an all-time high. Depression was at an all-time high. Anxiety. I mean, one of the stats I share is that 82% of Canadians said they had a higher level of stress during COVID. And I'm thinking, I say it's 100%. It's, the other I don't know who those other 18% is, but I don't care if you liked working from home or not. You have kids running around, or you have your pets, or I'd say everyone has had some increased level of anxiety during COVID. And your point, Ross, is a great one. I mean, now people are going back to work, but are they going back to work? And are they going back one day? Or are they going back 3 days? And I mean, in the organizations I'm involved in, people are even questioning, do I want to go back to work? And I used to interact every day, but I'm not sure how that's going to go now, because I haven't seen my coworkers in 2 years. And like, there's an anxiety just in terms of coming back. And what we see out in the marketplace, especially from a corporate perspective, there's two types of companies, I'll say, right? There's a company that says, yeah, we provide benefits because we have to, right? And it's kind of, and I wouldn't say a necessary evil, but it's part of the compensation package, and we have to provide it. And to your point, what we're seeing the companies that are really differentiating themselves moving forward are the ones that draw a line in the sand and make health of their employees a strategic priority. Like they say, you know what, we aren't just saying we care about your health. We're putting in the checks and balances, which include, a program like Advica or your program through us, right? And actually walking the talk. So when the employees come back, they are communicating that, your health is our number one priority. It's one of our top 5 strategic priorities. We got to be profitable. We got to hit revenue targets, but they're saying health of our employees is a strategic priority for the organization. And then backing it up with the checks and balances and the programs in place to help those employees. Right. And I believe, we call it beyond benefits. Like beyond benefits are, I got my health, I got my dental, my life, disability. Beyond benefits is the next level. And I believe those are the organizations that are going to be able to retain their employees, retain their best employees, and attract the best employees moving forward.
I agree. And, it's one of these things where you hope that corporations and companies are actually initializing that and saying, yeah, our employees benefit, health and wellness and mental health is a priority number one. And you just hope that even after this whole pandemic, that is a priority, because in some cases you hear of workplaces not prioritizing that as a real key benefit to employees. And at the end of the day, your team is what oils, puts the cogs together, builds the change, makes the engine run. They are the fuel to a business. And we just hope that even individuals who are listening to this, that, it is important to be in a supportive working environment, mentally, physically, emotionally, even spiritually, in a way, to have that support. And so it's very comforting that, there is, again, a company like yourself that sees that as a priority, because at the end of the day, we are all unable to do our jobs if the team is not well taken care of.
Yeah. And we touched on it a bit earlier. I think the other piece of it is preventative health. Like,
right.
I hate to say it. I mean, our system, I'll call it sick care. You have a health issue, and I'll use my previous example with the doc. I mean, the one to put me on meds, he actually later showed me a chart of what had happened to my cholesterol levels, my blood pressure, my sugar levels over 5 years. They were increasing every year. And so my question is, why didn't we get on this like 5 years ago? Like, why didn't you hook me up with a nutritionist and he said, oh, you were within range, right? And I'm going, well, and even from a mental health standpoint, maybe we're within range, but, is it getting worse? Is it getting worse? And then, then it's tougher to come back, right? Like, I was fortunate that I could, but it's tougher to come back. And so I think there's so much that can be done on the preventative side of things, physically, mentally, through the work that you do and different apps. Like, there's so much out there that tools that are available today to help us just, I'll say, be well and prevent those health issues down the road.
Yeah. And I think, the preventative measures is very much sort of like being an athlete. You're preparing yourself for the actual event itself. And in some cases, the preparation is worse than the actual event. Build up. And me personally, I've never done an Ironman, but I use myself as an example. The preparation itself seems a lot more difficult than the actual event it's going to be.
Yeah. Talk to me after.
Yeah.
Ironman it's a tough event, man.
Yeah, I'll phone you after and I'll let you know that I'm probably actually lying right now. What I'm saying, it's the opposite. But it is key. It's sort of like a team effort. So I'm watching the cycling in Paris, and you watch the Ironman, and you watch all these events and triathlete events, and you realize that individual is just one piece of the team pie. You have all these individuals around them as a support system that without them, they wouldn't be able to achieve their goals.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that, like in your case or my case, that's your family. It could be your sports chiropractor. It could be a physiotherapist. Probably, I assume you have a coach. I have a coach. It's like, it's that whole, it's your kids. It's every, that whole team, that whole support mechanism, right?
It is. And it's very much like that. And what you're offering is exactly like that. For example, in the time trials in the Tour de France, a tire goes out, it's the guy removes it, puts it back on, off they go. I mean, that's a team. That's that fluidity of that, preventative measures. If it does happen, we're ready for it. If this happens, we're ready for it. And I think that's so key in the well-being of employees and team members of a company, is not necessarily when it happens, but what if, being prepared. And you're so correct, in our health thing, if I knew ahead of time that this was potentially a condition that I might have had, why wasn't I prepared? Because again, I look at it like, I look healthy, I feel healthy. That's enough. I don't need any more than that. But I wasn't prepared for that kind of preparation of what if.
Yeah. And you know what, like I probably err, and I'm a big proponent of doing lots of screening and lots of different tests. And fortunately, being in the health business, I get to test a lot of our third-party providers and our partners. But, there's the other side of the coin out there where I've even had doctors say to me, well, why are you doing all this testing? Like, nothing's broken, right? And it's like again, going back to my story of me going on prescription meds, like I officially wasn't broken because I wasn't in the danger zone yet, but someone should have alerted that to me. And I equate it to our cars. I mean, I don't know about you, but when my service light goes on, I call the dealership and I take it in for service, and they put all the, equipment on, and they say, yeah, you need a O-ring here, you need this. But we don't do that with our own bodies, right? And even to have the medical community like question, why are you doing all this testing? Do you really need it? Like, I'd rather know in advance. I mean, I'm reading a book now on cancer, and that, it's the stat is 93% of cancers can be cured or eliminated if they're caught in stage 1. But the problem is most cancers aren't caught till stage 3 or 4, because that's when the signs.
Right.
So
it's true, because myself, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and it was one of those incidences where the doctor says proper screening would have potentially benefited that. But you live in a world where if I feel healthy and everything seems to be okay, everything seems to be okay. But I'm very much like you. As soon as any kind of light goes on in my car, it's instantly at the shop. And I've been there many times when they said, Ross, listen, this is normal. Please stop bringing it in. Everything is fine. And for a car mechanic to say, please stop bringing it in.
Yeah, for sure. You must have a good mechanic.
He's a good friend of mine. So he's very honest, which, no offense, but there's some out there that are not. But you're so correct. You and I are both athletes, but we went through a medical condition where potentially we could have prepared ourselves or pre-screened ourselves prior. But when you look in the mirror, you feel good, you look good, everything is going great. Your coach is like, yeah, you're fantastic. There is no reason for me to do anything because everything is good. And I worry about that sometimes in the workplace. Well, I've never had an incident at my job before, so there's no reason why I should be worried. And I do know, speaking to some employees of companies where they say, well, we've never had an issue, so we don't really necessarily focus on it. But it's that fear of what if, and one thing COVID has shown us, that what if can come quick.
Yeah, and I would say also health is like it's on everybody's mind right now, right? The healthcare system, the wait times, can I go to a hospital? Do I even still want to go to a hospital or a walk-in clinic? Like I could catch COVID, that type of thing. So, I don't think there's any better time, to the business leaders and executives or presidents or CEOs out there. I don't think there's any better time than now to differentiate yourself as an employer. And I'll say, make a small investment in the future health of not only employees, but as you said, Ross, the future health of the organization.
Yeah. And so do you think, some corporations or some companies, because of the financial incurrence that, a health system or a health company can bring on, they reluctantly don't bring it because of that? Do you think that's an issue now? And especially because COVID has shown economically, we are a little tight for cash too, right?
Yeah. I mean, either that, or again, it's just, is it a priority for you as an organization? And I mean, one of the things that we see over and over again is the companies that do invest in the health of their employees and well-being of their employees, their absenteeism numbers go down, their disability claims go down, their health claims go down. Because, and I'll use an example. I mean, the average wait time from when you see a when you have a condition, do you see a specialist in Canada? We'll just take a guess what the average wait time is. I'll ask you. What do you think, Ross?
I want to be generous, but I would say maybe like 2 hours.
No, wait time in months.
Like in months.
From the time you let's say you have a health issue, and from the time you have that health issue until you see your doctor and then see a specialist. What do you think the average wait time is?
Oh, I'm probably going to be wrong. I don't want to be generous. I'd say maybe 2 months. 2 months.
Yeah, you're very optimistic. A year ago, and this is from Health Canada, it was 21 weeks. It's now 25.6 weeks. So think of that, half a year. So you think if your employee cannot even get to see a specialist for that long, right? Then there's treatment and everything else. They're going on disability, or they're probably on health claims or other things. So, if you can get that period shortened to, let's say, 3 weeks or 2 weeks or a month through the work that we do and our teams do, then that person's going to get their issue resolved and be back to work much sooner. So we see, I guess my point is, to answer your question, we we see tremendous return on investment, ROI, for companies that invest a small amount in the health of their employees.
Well, at the end of the day, let's be honest, health has to be number one, in corporations and also personally, because, COVID, again, we speak so much of COVID, but COVID has shown that we are fragile and that even the healthiest people can be affected by something. Yeah. So I think as anyone who is in that corporate world or in the field of building a business needs to understand that there has to be a little piggy bank aside for the health of your team that has to be put in there. Whether it's small amount that you put in, you need to be able to understand that without your team, the business will never succeed. And I do hope that people do utilize companies like yourselves and say, listen, we need to make sure that our team is healthy mentally and physically, no matter what, because we don't know what tomorrow brings, but we're prepared for the what if situation.
Yeah. Well, and, you brought up a point earlier that made me think of, you take a manufacturing environment, they have insurance and they have, let's say, a maintenance company they hire, that if a machine goes down, like within half an hour, somebody's showing up and fixing that machine because it's having an impact on their business. But a lot of organizations don't do that same thing with their employees and even the executive group. Like you look at the executive team, like if an executive team a member goes down because they have a health issue, think of the impact on that business, right? And but meanwhile, it's commonplace to have that type of service on your machinery or your equipment, but not so much on your key asset, which is your employees.
Yeah, very true. And I want to jump into something, because I think we need to talk about it too as well. And first of all, where you have the time to do something like this, you're an author, and you're not only an author, but you're friends with amazing authors too that have helped write your book. But first of all, where do you find the time to do that?
So, what I have a thing that I keep actually on my laptop, and it's called future thoughts and paths. And any thought I come up with, I just write it down. And it could be like silly things, it could be big things. And I started doing this in 2013. And it's amazing when I go back and look at this list, I've without even going back, like I only go back and visit it once every 6 months, but literally everything on this list has been accomplished. And one of them was write a book. And I thought, I'm going to write a book about my story, really to help people not go through what I went through. Right. To basically avoid the pitfalls that I made, where, again, I just thought, as long as I do this one thing and I keep running every day, I can do whatever I want. Right. And then I had a second wake up call, and then, what I've done since then. So from a time perspective, it did take a lot of time. A year ago, about a year ago now, we were just in the final edits, and it was like day and night just to get it done and get it finished. But what I thought would take me 6 months was probably a 2-year project. So it wasn't, and if I did it again, actually, I want to write another book. I would literally go away for a month and just do it, instead of trying to combine it with my business and everything else.
So is the book around your personal experience and your journeys through, obviously, your ups and downs in health, and also as an athlete as well?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've seen, but my book, I don't know if you can even see that, but it's called It's Never Too Late to Be Healthy. It's actually on Amazon, and all proceeds go to help send kids to camp that can't afford it, 100% of the proceeds. But it gets into my personal story, and then gets into how, the importance of having a health network around you, and how that can help you, and how it's helped me in my own life, right? Many times, everything from sports injuries to potential issues. Like one of the things when I look back that we spoke about earlier was my marathon near-death experience. I've later found out through testing that the reason that happened is genetically, I don't process or absorb magnesium, potassium. So no matter how much of, I'll say sports drinks or electrolytes I would take before an event, I wasn't absorbing them. So if I had known that prior to the marathon, if I'd done that testing prior to the marathon, and then I could have upped those levels, likely it wouldn't have happened. But again, I didn't know. You don't know what's going on under the hood, right? So yeah, it's a combination of my personal experience, personal story, and real practical tips that people can put into their life, like today, very simple, that I use to change my health around, and thousands of others have used to change their health around as well.
That's amazing. And would you say like the tips and tricks and things that you've created in your own personal health journey, you've implemented in Advica, like kind of built it around that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, again, a lot of what I've talked about in my book is on the, having a network available to you when you have a health issue, but more importantly, preventative, right? And things you can do from a prevention standpoint. So, I mean, to give you an example, I developed a concept called the 4 wheels of health, like the wheels on a car, right? You have 4 wheels on a car, and we all know we got to keep them from getting a flat. And when that happens, if we get a flat, we have to put one of those little donuts on and go in the slow lane, right? So you could be driving a Ferrari, but you're like chugging along at 50 kilometers an hour. And, so to equate that to the wheels of health, we've got food or how we nourish ourselves. We've got exercise, how we move. We've got mindfulness, and that's how we control our stress levels, and sleep. Right. So the book really is broken down in those 4 areas, and things that I have done personally and thousands of others have done, thousands of our members have done to radically improve their health. And really, it's my story of what I did. After I came home from the doctor and he wanted to put me on those meds, what did I do, and what do I continue to do to be, to live that healthy life ongoing?
That's amazing. Yeah, it is. Well, first of all, I'm going to be buying the book because I think that's absolutely great. And, something that I could look to as an individual to inspire to as well, because again, other people's journeys are our pre-journey experiences. We are able to utilize other people's experiences to better ourselves. And, your journey has helped create a company that is giving hope and giving care back to healthcare, which again is something that is so important now more than ever, even at home or in the office. It's so important that we as individuals, as team leads or bosses or CEOs have the ability to offer the best care possible to our team members. So your journey has created hope, which is truly amazing.
Yeah, thank you for that. And your point is dead on. I mean, whether you're working from home, and I think we have to be realistic. There'll be a lot of businesses that will be operating in a hybrid environment. And it's, what tools can you give your company, your employees, to protect their health, prevent health issues, and if they have a health issue, make sure they're looked after, whether they're working from home or working at the office. Right. Just to surround them no matter what. Yeah.
And it's just, a warm hug. And you know what, there's nothing wrong with that kind of camaraderie and that human connection, because again, the pandemic has shown that we need that support from one another. And so my question is, if people wanted to get in touch with you and Advica and bring this to the forefront of their company, how would they find you?
Yeah, so again, name is Kevin Brady, so they can Google it if they want. I'm on LinkedIn.
I have.
The name of our company is Advica, and I always get asked, why is it called Advica? Well, we're advocates for your health, right? So just remember, Advica, Advica health.com, and all our information is on there as well. And perhaps in the show notes, Ross, you can include my contact information. I'd be more than pleased to hop on a call with any individual or company or anybody that's interested in our program or programs. And we, as you know, we have a lot of B2C, so a lot of individual members that just want to be a part of our program. And then we've got corporate clients right across Canada and in the US actually, that we look after on an ongoing basis as well.
Amazing. And yes, I'll put all the info and the keynote there at the bottom so everyone can find you. And on a personal level, but also on a PsyMood level, it's an honor to be a part of Advica, but also experience the journey that you've been on to get to where you are, Kevin. It's on a personal level, it's given me motivation. It's also helped me go like, you know what, the willpower is strong enough. I'm going to do it. I can do it. But also to be smart and to be prepared, and preventative measures. I think out of all of this, preventative measures, if something seems wrong or different or off, always ask. And in a company, as a team member, if you feel there's something off, don't be afraid to ask. And I think also in the corporate level, in the executive level, if you're getting questions like this, then you need to implement Advica and, to have that appointments, support, solutions, because let's be honest, we need our teams to be healthy because we don't know what's next. But what we do know is if our team is healthy, we'll make it through it.
Yeah, great point. And also like to thank you, Ross, for having me on today, but also more importantly, for being a partner in our network. Because again, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is provide people with the very best health solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And we're very stringent on who we let in our network. So it was hands down when the team did the research and met with yourself and your team, it was, we need to include them as part of our program. So congratulations on what you've built as well.
Well, thank you very much. And it's truly an honor. And this won't be the last time that we will be speaking. We look forward to plenty more on a personal level. I look forward to speaking to you more. And I promise to let you know if I survive the Ironman, I'll let you know.
You will survive. And we'll be in touch before that because we're going to switch roles and reverse the podcast host here.
That's right. Exactly. I'm going to be the one being interviewed. So I look forward to that. And Kevin, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for everyone for listening and enjoy the rest of your day.
Have a great, healthy day, everyone.